Good evening and welcome to the Wyndham-Raymond School District Board of Directors meeting. Tonight is November 15th, 2017, and the time is 6:32. And if I could have a roll call, Mr. Prince?
Sure can. Kate Bricks.
Here.
Eric Colby.
Present.
Jenny Cummins.
Here.
Don Dillon. Diana Forsland.
Here.
Marge Cavoni. Pete Hensler.
Here.
Anna Kinney.
Here.
Scott McLean.
Here. Delano Genevieve.
Here.
Thank you. And if you would stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Oh, no.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we have no adjustments to the agenda this evening, so now's our time for public input. If you could just state your name and where you live.
Sure. My name is Representative Jessica Fay. I live here in Raymond, and I represent House District 66, which is part of Raymond, part of Poland, and part of Casco. So there's 3 school administrative districts that I'm trying to keep up with, encompassing 9 different towns. But I thought I'd just come here and reintroduce myself to many of you and let you know that I would love to be a resource for you if you have questions about what's happening at the state level. I may not know the answers right off the bat, but I can certainly find them for you. And if you have questions about what's happening or want to have input into policy decisions that are being made, I'm happy to be a conduit for you. So here I am. You can reach me at jessica.fay@maine.legislature.gov. Or my phone number is 415-4218.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Glad you stopped by. It's nice for everybody to see who our new rep is. Is there anybody else that would like to speak?
Good evening. You want to come over and join me? My name is Alyssa Messer.
And my name's Sarah Davis. We're both from Raymond.
Yeah, we're both from Raymond. We're going to talk with you tonight, but we represent a group of people that are here. I represent the Parents Advisory Committee, which is a group of advisors from each grade at RES that works with the principal and vice principal. And Sarah?
I represent the PTO. I currently sit on the Raymond PTO.
And we want to bring to your attention tonight an issue that we're seeing in our school and kind of try to present a possible solution or discussion to start working towards a solution. So in the Parents Advisory Committee, one of the things that we do on an annual basis is do a survey of our parents and guardians in our school as far as how are we doing? How are we doing with food? How are we doing with communication? How are we doing with all these type of things that happen in our school day? And we started noticing for the last 2 years a trending issue about communication. Then we paralleled that to children that were not being involved in some of the extracurricular activities that happen outside of school hours but are very paramount to education. For example, mad science, softball, basketball, and then other things like Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts. We saw declining numbers. Our rec department saw declining numbers. And we started putting together some of the comments that we were seeing in the Parents Advisory Group on those surveys. And in fact, there's been a big disconnect of communication out to the community, which for us here in Raymond is a really big thing. The community is where we see each other. The school is very much a pivotal part of that. And so what we have done is we recognize that there is a really big problem. And we started working and discussing as a group. We saw it again in our trending surveys this fall when we met as a group for the very first time. And we said, we need to do something about this. So far, just to give you 3 examples, and there's many more. I know your time is short. I hope perhaps we can be invited back to give you more information should you request it. But so far, we've closed our Girl Scouts for Raymond. We've closed our basketball K-2 in Raymond. We've lost Mad Science this fall. And these are all because of communications and people not knowing. These are historically programs that are full, if not with a waiting list. So what we wanted to do is come before you and say that we've recognized this as a problem and also bring a solution to you. And fortunately, as we were discussing the solution in the Parents advisory group, we found out there was a separate group in Raymond that had also noticed these same problems in our PTO, and they started crafting things. So we started working together to present something perhaps that could start a discussion between us. So Sarah, do you want to talk a little bit?
Yeah, so what I did is I took some time to try to understand what the issue was, why we moved in 2016. It went in, you passed it in 2015, but it went into effect in 2016 to a policy where we don't disseminate any information unless it's directly school related. And so I spent some time trying to figure out what the issues were with that. We identified that there were three main issues, that it was a drain on resources, that you felt like you were advertising, and what was the third one? Drain on resources. You felt like you were advertising, and there were some concerns about liability. And so I spent some time looking at other people's policies, what other people do, and how they address these issues. And what we've put together, and it's just a straw man because we, like we said, we didn't want to come to you with a problem that didn't have a solution. So we thought we might try to present something to you on what we were thinking. Obviously, you're in charge of the policies, and you set them and you draft them. But we thought maybe if we had a start thinking about it, recognizes, you know, the important policy of making sure that our schools are functioning and that education is being taught in them all day and that resources aren't drained away from that. But at the same time, recognizing that there are things that can enhance the education of the school system that are okay to be disseminated. And so we took those two competing principles, we drafted them into a policy that encompasses both of them, and we're certainly more than happy to hand it out. I didn't want it to seem presumptuous that we would come with something drafted, but I did want to have a solution. So we have that here, and we hope that maybe we can meet with the policy committee. You know, we're really looking to you to how we can help do this, but there is a very large contingent, certainly in the Raymond area, and we participate in Wyndham, and I hear it there as well, that believes that really this needs to be addressed, that we went maybe too far, and maybe we should just relook at what we did in 2016 to say, is it really having impact on our programs?
Well, thank you for bringing that to our attention. On the policy committee is myself, Janie, and Kate, and we actually took all of 2015 to craft that policy. So obviously we did not intend any harm by that, so it's good that you came with some feedback. However, I'm going to give the mic to Kate, see what we might do as a next step.
First of all, I'm thrilled that y'all have come to advocate for children, because that's our business, so thank you very much. You know, we don't get too many people who come to visit us, so when we have this many in the room, we take notice for sure. So I appreciate the efforts that the digging, and I'm a real data-driven gal, so I appreciate the fact that you've done a lot of legwork and are not just coming with assumptions, that you have some stuff that really has some meat to it. And as you know, our policy system is very fluid. Nothing is cast in stone. They're working documents that we tweak, not a lot of times, but if we feel like it's important, we will definitely tweak them. I appreciate the feedback. As Diana had said, we did a huge amount of legwork ourselves when we put this together, and we looked at all the districts in the surrounding area and their practice, and we had our gatekeeper, which is Sandy's secretary, do a lot of legwork too. So we, as you know, we try to do no harm, but there were, aside from, and thank you for mentioning the resources, just briefly, because this is not the solution time right now, but I just wanted just a little summation that it was resources, but it was also the one that you didn't touch on that maybe you forgot about or didn't think of, was that we became concerned that our message, educational message, was becoming diluted. Because when I'm on all the listservs, so I see everything that goes out. And we noticed that our principals' messages, the direct school, the information that we wanted, our business was becoming a little bit lost in the shuffle with the sheer amount of things that were going out. So just a little bit background for you. What I think would be great is if we all met and sat down with the policy committee. I think there's likely, some solutions that are not too dramatic that we could assist so that there's more information going out for students to become more involved in activities, because of course I personally endorse that. It's the mechanics of it, the business aspect of it, but I appreciate the importance of it for sure. So if you all would email me or email Sandy with your contact information, and then I will set up a meeting and we'll get to work.
Wonderful. We have that information all together, so I'll just be the point person, and
Okay.
that way you're not bombarded with a
right.
dozen people emailing you. So I'll be sure to send something tonight to both of you. And
Okay.
thank you for your time. I appreciate listening. We do have some creative ideas.
Good.
We just didn't want to bring them forth tonight, and it's
Yeah.
not the right
No,
forum.
it's not
So
the time.
anything that you like us to share, we'll be glad to do that.
Super.
So thank you so
Thank you.
much.
I have just one question. Did you know that we had kept in, one of the things that we kept in is, there is an email that goes out once a month that will have the Raymond links. Were you aware of that?
That will
would have the park and recs, that would have the library. Once a month that goes out. It says, don't forget to check what's going on in the community.
So some of our creative thinking around this incorporates that, but according to how it's written right now, there was some question as to whether or not that was
Okay.
appropriate. But that is something that we have incorporated into
Okay.
some of our creative ideas. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. So we have seen that, but whether or not it was allowed is what we wanted to come before and make sure that we were all on the same page.
But we thank you very much for coming.
Yeah,
It's awesome to
yeah.
have people that
Thank
are-
you all for your service to our
We
community.
really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, our first order of business is to welcome back, I guess I should say, our board members, Kate and Pete, who won re-election, so bravo. Next on the agenda, we have Principal Chris Howell, who will be providing a variety of updates for us. Thank you for coming, Chris.
You didn't have to scare off the cat.
I know.
Just going to take a moment to hand some things out. Cindy, is Dawn here tonight? You know? Okay. So everybody needs one of those. So take that. I'll take. Okay.
There you go.
I'm going to do my best to stand and talk tonight from this particular spot, and if I need to move, I'll kind of slide over to where Dawn's spot is. And thank you for the opportunity to come tonight and to share some things about the high school. Thank you for the opportunity to be engaged in some really meaningful work at Wyndham High School. You know, the topics we're going to talk about tonight, Wyndham High School right now is probably undergoing its greatest change that building has seen in the last 50 years as far as what's happening with curriculum instruction and assessment. And there's a whole bunch of activities that are going on. And I know tonight when Terry first contacted me about coming here tonight and being able to share a few things, one of the things that really kind of went through my mind is we really need to spend a little bit of time tonight before we get into some of these things actually tying these pieces together, because much like when we work with staff and even with students on, you know, here's the new initiative that seems like it's coming down the pike, in reality, all the different things that we're working on and all the different things that you've asked me to come and give you an update on tonight are all interrelated with one another. And I think it's important that we recognize that. And I think it's important that we recognize that all those integral pieces are all for one purpose, which is to make sure that students like Genevieve and all the other 978 students at Wyndham High School, that when they leave Wyndham High School, they're fully prepared to take their next step, and that they have some choices. And probably Genevieve's heard me say it 1,000 times, but when I see our kids leaving Wyndham High School, our Wyndham and Raymond students, I want them to be prepared. I want them to have choice. And much like we've talked about in the past, someday their paperwork's going to be on a table, someone's going to make a decision about them, and I want them to be in the A pile and not the B pile when that decision is made. And so part of what we're going to talk tonight is how do we as an institution and an organization make sure that students are fully prepared when they go ahead and leave. So it's really hard to stand at a podium and share things. So I'm going to do my best to kind of talk sideways here. And I guess I'll get a nasty nod if you guys can't hear me. But I'm going to do my best. I hope all of you are at least familiar with this particular poster. Oh, I got an easel? Wow. Thank you.
Success yet.
That's okay. We're 90% of the way there. Just flip it around and I'll put this up. So I hope this poster is familiar to you. For those of you who've been in the district for quite a while, this is the mission and vision that came out of our last strategic plan. And it really is the glue that holds all the different items that we're talking about tonight together. First of all, and I hope everyone's familiar with our mission statement, which is the mission of the Wyndham Raymond School District, is to ensure success for all learners. Okay? So that means if you're a learner who lives in Moses Little, if you're a learner that lives in South Wyndham, if you're a learner that lives up on the lake, if you're a learner who lives in an apartment building somewhere on 302, we're talking about success for all students. We're talking about preparation for all students. We're not separating our students about. This is about success for all the kids that come through the door in our district and who come through the doors of Wyndham High School. And then the second piece, which is our vision, and it's a little different than our current vision, but it's some pieces of language in here that I think it's important that we revisit. So every student in Wyndham Raymond School is actively engaged in authentic, individualized, and personally relevant learning. Designed and supported by highly effective, qualified, and passionate staff. A safe learning environment. Students explain why their learning is important, and they're competent in articulating their progress as they reach ambitious individual goals. Students learn in technology-rich environments, no longer defined by traditional boundaries, engaging with the local and global communities. Now here's where they're effective stewards and natural resources, and here's where we're going to spend a lot of our time tonight. Every student leaves our schools as a responsible, involved citizen, a collaborative and quality worker, clear and effective communicator, creative and practical problem solver, integrative and informed thinker, and a self-directed and lifelong learner. Okay. This part right here, if you've heard about proficiency-based education and you've heard me talk about it before, this is what proficiency-based is all about. That these are our graduation standards. So you may see them at the younger levels. They may be listed as some habits of work items or some classroom things that are being measured. But when it comes to Wyndham High School, these are the things and the activities that we are looking to make sure that all of our students. So whether a student is engaged in a capstone project, or whether a student is going to the APEX program and working on individual standards to meet graduation standards, or whether or not we have an outside organization who is coming to look and to really kind of peel back all the layers of Wyndham High School, what everyone's looking for and what everyone's looking to support are those things. For those of you who've been in education, those are the guiding principles of the learning results. Okay? But these are our supreme graduation standards. These are the things that we're looking to measure. These are the opportunities that we're looking to provide for students. And you as a board, when you get a chance to look at the revised graduation policy, this is what you're saying that I need to certify students to do, that they can demonstrate in order for you to empower me to issue them a diploma. Okay, so I really wanted to spend some time tonight kind of using this as our glue And as we talk about some programs and as we talk about some other things, that we can kind of keep connecting back to, guess what, this is why we're here. This is why you fund our district. This is why we do all these things. This is why we have listservs with all sorts of things that go out with all sorts of information, is to ensure that students are here. And it's also to ensure that students reach these in multiple pathways so that they have all sorts of different opportunities to do that, and also to make sure that our students are doing it in a very rigorous way. Okay? You've instructed me as a board, you've given me comments as a board, you want our students fully prepared. You want to make sure their curriculum is rigorous. You want to make sure that their curriculum is relevant. You have, as a board, in what you've invested in your high school, one of the highest graduation rates for large schools in the state of Maine, if not the highest at the moment, for schools that are about 1,000. Okay, so part of your investment has been this recognition that these things are important. So the first thing that I want to talk about tonight, and you have a program in there that says Apex. Grab my water. There it is. So a couple weeks ago in your board packet, you received a request from me for additional personnel for the Apex program. Okay, and some of you may or may not have known at that point that we actually had a program at Wyndham High School that was called Apex. Apex, which stands for Alternative Programming for Excellence. That program currently exists if you are up on the second floor of Wyndham High School in the guacamole pod, the guac pod, where most of foreign languages. If you walk around the corner and you're heading towards science, there's a suite of offices where the Apex program is there. Ms. Sheetenhelm, who is the single individual who runs that program, works in an on-site alternative program, and she works with up to 20 students, and they're students for whom the size of Wyndham High School may not work. She works with students who might have had significant disruptions to their education. So they've been out of school for a while, and they really need some one-on-one to make sure that they are getting themselves up to speed. She also works with students who, you know what, they just need to have things presented in an alternative way, and they need to have that opportunity. So what Ms. Sheetenhelm does, and she is a former English teacher that we hired out of Massachusetts, she takes the English standards and she takes the social studies standards. And she writes curriculum that's written at the same rigor and level of expectation as what is taught in a typical English class or what is taught in a typical social studies class, but she uses her magic and presents those materials to students in any way that's actually going to bring relevance, that's going to bring rigor, and that's going to bring interest. She has had huge, huge success in that program. And there are a number of students who have graduated from Wyndham High School in the last 3 years who would not have done so without her personal help, oversight, case management, riding some kids to make sure that, in fact, that they were getting their things done, mothering some kids, doing some social work type services with kids, making sure their individual needs are met. One of the things that we have with Apex, though, is that we're only, because it's a single person who is certified in my humanities background, we're only able to provide right now service and support for direct instruction in English and in social studies. To cover math and science, what we've done is that we have, where people might have a prep, not a prep, but a duty-free period that might actually open up, we've scheduled some people into Apex for math and science, and we've tried to provide some support to the best we can so that students who need a science credit or students who need a math credit, that they have an opportunity to earn that. Last year in my budget, and if you remember last year, many of us lost positions. An early item in my budget was to have somebody who could support math and science for the Apex program. It quickly came out of the budget this past year because obviously we were trying to create a balanced budget and it just was not going to be a reality. This past fall, I had a business teacher who resigned on the first day of school. And those of you who may or may not hire individuals within a school environment, once you pass the middle of August, and especially in positions that are where individuals are few and far between, it's absolutely impossible to find somebody in that position during that time. So we did some scrambling. We actually went and rescheduled all of those students, with the exception of some accounting kids, who we found an outside instructor to do, but we rescheduled all those students because my chance of finding someone highly qualified to teach the classes that were vacated were next to nothing, and to have someone who was just a rotating sub through didn't make sense. So currently in the Wyndham High School budget, there is 4/5 of a position that is not filled. And so my communication to all of you, and it was really to give you some awareness, was that for the remainder of the school year, can we use that 4/5 position in order to be able to meet the needs of kids in math and science who are having difficulty meeting standards? I mean, that's really what it comes down to. Or students who need that alternate learning environment to be able to have some support. Specifically, we'd be looking for someone who probably more science background than math. We do have some math teachers who are kind of rotating in, and will continue to do that. But in reality, we're looking for, between now and June, to be able to provide those supports to students in that APEX program. Next year, when we get actually starting in April, when we can get a chance to start hiring, I will be using that position to fund a computer science position. I think it's a position that's been woefully lacking at Wyndham High School, and a program that's been woefully lacking that we can go ahead and then provide some coding, some computer hardware, and some other pieces for students to make sure that they're fully prepared. To be able to find someone who has that skill set at the start of the school year, who's going to be of the quality that we want for our students, it was just too difficult at that point. So if anything right now, this is a chance to inform. I know that there were some questions that you might have had. So before I move on to anything else with what you've asked to talk to me now, are there any other questions about APEX?
I gotta imagine that someone like you've got in the English sciences specialized in that, and they obviously have a gift with those kids, and having somebody that's just rotating in may not have that skill set to work with those kids, and that would be the benefit to having somebody that was.
And that's exactly right. And there's a benefit to, and you almost want to think of it as a case management aspect. Students who are in that program, even if they may not have a class, will still find their way to that program and have found it to be a safe place, a place that they feel comfortable in. And also, Ms. Sheetenhelm has done wonders on some kids that, because we typically, because of numbers, offer this to our upperclassmen, that she's been able to get kids who had some either truancy issues or attendance issues through the freshman and sophomore year to start coming to school, number one, but to then be able to follow through on a number of things. APEX is a program that students have to apply to. There is a probationary period, and if students show that this isn't something that's going to work for them, we'll move on because it's such a valuable resource. Genevieve?
How many kids are in this program?
There are up to 20 students who are there, and right now I don't know our exact number if we're full. But we have had students who've come, they've gone through the probationary period, and the packet refers through that probationary period what students need to demonstrate. I love on the back, it's a kind of a teacher and student compact. Here's what students should be doing, here's what teachers should be doing. The teacher should be doing within this program, and really outlines if this is a program that you want to take advantage of as a student, here are the expectations that are necessary for you to be able to follow through on. Ms. Briggs.
That was very formal, thank you. Is this the kind of program where you apply, you get in, and then you're in for the year, or do people float in, and do you know what I'm saying?
Yep.
So ultimately, you could possibly serve more than 20.
Correct. The way that the program is structured, that when a student would go up to do a humanities approach with social studies and English, they are then, because of scheduling, they're pretty much there for the year.
The year? Okay.
Because they would then have fallen out of the instructional cycle for whatever class that they're coming out of.
Okay.
And one thing that Ms. Sheetenhelm does a really fantastic job on is that when students come into her classes, she really tries to pinpoint what are their deficits coming in. Because also for some of our students, they've not seen success in school for a number of reasons, and so she really tries to, through some tools such as the SRI or using NWA, to make sure that, you know what, if it's a reading deficit or if there's some other deficits that are going on, that she can then tackle that. I would welcome any of you if you're at the high school and you want to go visit the program.
Yeah.
It's a little gem up in the kind of that southern part that looks down 202 on Wyndham High School.
Have you tracked graduation rates for this program?
Only anecdotally.
Okay.
And the students who typically, students who go through the program graduate. There's only 2 or 3 that I can think of in the last 3 years who've not. And there have been larger issues that have taken place that have prevented that student.
That's a good success rate.
It's a great success rate. And the relationships that are built there, and part of it also is that when you have a fantastic dynamic educator who has a big heart for kids, she's going to be successful whatever she does. I think the format and how she's built this has been absolutely fantastic.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions on Apex?
These kids wouldn't be Katahdin students.
Typically not. If you wanted to, I would say a Katahdin's probably our most restrictive program when it comes to alternative. For students, it might be in Apex. They might be there for just a class or a couple classes, and would then have a regular schedule or are looking to access a regular schedule. Once a student goes to Katahdin, their ability to access anything at Wyndham High School becomes very, very difficult because of the geography.
Chris.
Yes, go ahead.
What is the demand like amongst students? Are you sitting on a pile of applications of students that are just sitting on a waiting list type of thing to get into this program?
Typically, right now we're not currently. We have a couple students that we're looking at. Our typical busy season, though, for looking at referrals is actually coming right about now when first quarter report cards are just coming out. Students may or may not have had some success. For some students, they may have had a difficult freshman year, and there's a maturity that happens between freshman and sophomore, or a maturity that happens between sophomore and junior. And then for other kids, habits and things or other issues that take place may actually then rear themselves. And so typically between now and the holidays is when a number of those start to rise. Then we're looking to make changes for second semester or starting the new year within a program. So I would expect, and it's also, I would say, similar for us for Katahdin for referrals that we're looking at for students.
Yep.
It's a difficult time of year for students.
Yep.
No question about it.
Okay, last question, but you're asking for a math science, so it wouldn't always necessarily be the same students that are there now. You might be bringing other students who don't need the science,
It would allow us to serve more students than what we're currently doing. It would also, one of the challenges that we're running to is that, and again, I'm going to go back to this, success for all learners. As we've been working to do some transformation at Wyndham High School for grading practices so that, students having to meet all standards in order to receive credit for course, we're looking to then also building additional remediation opportunities for students who aren't in an alternative setting. And, we're finding that being able to use teachers within a department at a time when they may have a duty-free period or a duty period that we can then use them to work with students is then taking a resource away from Apex. And so trying to make sure that we're meeting the other 950 students who may need to meet things. And also, as Genevieve's very aware, and maybe many of you are also aware, we now have a building-wide remediation policy, which is something we haven't had in the past, where students who aren't doing well in assessments, if they're doing all the work leading up to that, they're able to come back and redo those assessments. That takes quite a bit of manpower, woman power, whatever you want to call it, personnel, to be able to make sure that we're either recreating assessments, working with students to make sure they're fully prepared, and that's time that's all outside of regular classroom instruction, with a little bit more of a demand on our workforce within the building. but it's providing some great opportunities for students to show some success. Okay? Let's talk about NEASC. So I've given you a little packet from our accreditation handbook. This by no means is the entire handbook. It's just a sample of what I thought might be relevant to you as a school committee to understand what it is that we've been going through and what we'll be going through together, because you're actually part of this process as a board, what we'll be going through together over the next few months. So the New England Association of Schools and Colleges is our accrediting body. It's the accreditation group that's used by a majority of high schools in the state of Maine and a majority of high schools across New England. And, you know, it's interesting, we've had conversations with other schools about, you know, is everyone going to stay with NEASC, going to break with NEASC? You know, Scarborough talked about it. Scarborough had their NEASC visit last week. Westbrook's gearing up for theirs. Greeley has their visit this year. So some of the schools, we've all kind of settled on, you know what, this is going to be our process, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to embrace it. NEASC comes and visits every 10 years. It's a decennial evaluation. This is actually year 11 for us, and the reason why we've gone to year 11 is that they had too many schools in year 10, and they asked if we would mind doing that. The other reason is that they sent us a report based on some feedback that we had sent in year 7, and they sent that report to Windham, Connecticut. Of course, there's a Windham, Connecticut, and a Windham, Massachusetts, and a Windham, New Hampshire. So we never got that report. They felt sorry for us, and they said, absolutely, you can take an additional year in order to be able to do this. You know, you've asked me before about accreditation and whether or not it's a valuable process, and now kind of being knee-deep in it, I do think it's a valuable process for the high school to go through. I really do. And part of it is that NEASC is going to come, and they're going to say, you know what, this is great that you have had this on the wall for the last 6 years, but did you actually mean it? That's really what it's going to come down to. Did you actually mean it? They're going to look through our curriculum, and they're going to look through our opportunities for students, and they're going to say, did you really mean the guiding principles down here? Within NEASC, they call these the 21st century skills. They say, did you really mean it? Are there opportunities for students to learn it? Are you assessing it? Have you written scoring guides? Are there rubrics that are attached to that? And that's going to be part of their process. So when we go through this process and we get a final report, we as a high school can then report back to you, report back to our legislators, report back to our superintendent, hear how, as an outside body, is making a judgment. Are we actually doing this? Are we not doing this? And so it's a great opportunity. It's been a good opportunity for us as a high school to examine ourselves, to say, you know what, we're really, really strong in what we've done for curriculum and assessment and for some of the instructional moves that we've made. But guess what? We could do a whole lot better job in involving parents with some things. We also could do a better job of making sure that everything is articulated in every single subject area as kids go through. So we've already started to learn some things about ourselves. And when we finally work through this process, we'll have a report that we'll give back to you, and it will say, you know what, here's what we think our strengths and weaknesses are. Here's what an outside body thinks our strengths and weaknesses are. And they're going to work with us, and they're going to actually have us develop a 2-year plan, a 5-year plan, and a 7-year plan as to how we're going to address things that come up through the accreditation process. So in your packet here, and I'm just going to kind of walk through to give you some pieces. First of all, I gave you a couple pages if you ever want to peruse through it on your own time. But value as far as why are we actually going through this? Why is it an important thing? You've invested $30,000 for this process for us to go through accreditation. But you also invest as the two communities of Windham and Raymond about $7 million each year to the running of Windham High School. And so it's also helpful for you to be able to report out to the community that, you know what, we're investing your tax dollars well, and state of Maine tax dollars well. And you know what, here's a piece of a report that's going to be able to do that. And again, it talks about some value in here as far as, you know, what are some things that we need for support. For those of you who've lived in these communities long enough, 1997, Wyndham High School was put on probation for accreditation for facilities. And it then became a document that Mrs. Gendron at the time actually was able to work with some local legislators and to be able to say, you know what, we need to really address some issues that are going on at the high school with space. And then most of you know at that time you had a building that had been built for 550 and you were sending 800 students there. And you had 38 portable classrooms and 38 indoor classrooms. So a very, very different place. If you could take a peek at this sheet right here, which has got the cycle on it. Here's how NEASC really views what's important. And if you notice, right in the middle of the circle are teaching and learning standards. And so what is it that we do at Wyndham High School, and what do we base it on? What are the standards that we use? Are we using nationally normed standards in order to be able to make some judgments on what it is that we teach? They're very curious about what have we identified for core values, beliefs, and learning expectations. And kind of for fun, I brought some samples tonight. A while back as a high school, we went through a process of what do we think is important? When a student leaves Wyndham High School, what is it that we think is important? And so we didn't use this document because, you know what, that's what the community decided. We went through the process. So this group created a robot, definitely wanted an independent learner, leader, self-aware, respectful, curious, compassionate, kind, open-minded. And then if you look at the bottom, guiding principles magically appeared. And this wasn't actually through prompting of guiding principles. I love this one with a graduate. This one has a graduate with all these little merit badges of here are knowledge and skills items that that student has learned along the way. But again, critical thinker, good communicator, cultural literacy, want to have a basic understanding of citizenship and civic duty. I'll just kind of skip here to one more. And you can probably guess. Yeah, let's go with this one. That there was an art teacher in the group who worked on that one. But respectful, responsible, community involved, so community involvement, stands up for beliefs, artistic, compassionate, courageous, sophisticated, problem solver, creative thinker. And one of the things that we noticed as a faculty, and we went through this process, is that what our staff was thought to be important was actually what our community thought was important when we went through a strategic planning process. And so those core values, beliefs, and learning expectations, it's great that we believe that as a staff, but do we provide opportunities for students to practice those? The curriculum, we spent a lot of time in curriculum over the last couple of years as we've ramped up for our proficiency diploma. You know, what are we doing for instruction? Does our instruction match our curriculum? And then I love this piece, assessment of and for student learning. So assessment of, that's me making a judgment. Assessment for is, guess what? You didn't get it. We're going to work together to figure out a way that you can get it. Okay? So if you think about APEX, what we just talked about, a lot of what happens in APEX is assessment for learning. Not getting it, here's what we're going to do. A reassessment policy. It's assessment for learning because that wants to be our number one focus. And then here's where you as a board come in under some of those support standards. Community resources for learning. Do you as a board provide enough resources for the schools to do what they need to do? School resources. How do I, as the leader of the high school, allocate resources in the building to make sure that learning's occurring? And then there's going to be a whole section where they'll be evaluating me and my leadership. And also leadership teams. What kind of culture have we developed at the high school? What's the leadership structure? Do teachers have voice to be able to ask about those things? And so over the next couple pages, and I'm not going to read through them for sake of time, but they're going to be looking at 7 standards. And there are 7 standards committees that are working right now. And each one of those committees, so Committee 1, which Ms. Michaud, who's one of our science teachers, is chairing, they're looking at our core values, beliefs, our learning expectations, and they are writing a report to each one of these individual performance indicators, which they themselves have additional smaller grain size indicators, and they will be reporting that to NEASC. Our report is due to NEASC about 6 to 8 weeks before they come, so we're shooting for February to be done. But they'll be looking at those core values, our curriculum, the instruction that takes place, assessment of and for student learning, school culture and leadership, school resources for learning, and then also our community resources for learning. They'll be looking at all those individual pieces. There'll be 16 individuals who are coming. They're coming the first week of May. That's actually April 30 to May 3rd, I think is when they leave, or May 2nd. So they'll be here for a few days, and each, or 2 of each, will be assigned to one of these committees, and they'll be meeting with the individuals who wrote the report to say, you know what, can you show me the evidence? You say that you do this, show me the evidence. You say that you do scoring guides. You say that you have every single one of your standards mapped out and the rubrics that are attached with it. Show me. They're going to spend some time talking to students. They want to talk to some randomly selected students. They want to talk to parents. And they also want to talk to you as a full board on the Sunday afternoon that they're here. And they'll have some questions. And obviously you get the opportunity to respond in any which way that you like about how you allocate resources, and also how that you provide me with some autonomy to actually get the work done. So they'll have a number of questions that they'll have for you. And so that's Sunday, April 30th. When we get the final schedule and times and all of that, then we'll have an opportunity to share that information with you so that you can put it on your calendars. Those meetings on the Sunday afternoon, they'll be meeting with parents, they'll be meeting with some students, and also they'll be receiving a presentation from the school. There'll be a small little reception in the high school, which all of you would want to have and invited to, with a visiting committee then has the opportunity to learn a little bit more about who we are. And then that next day, they'll be shadowing students throughout the school. They'll be eating lunch in the cafeteria to make sure that the food there is appropriate. They'll be looking at our technology resources. They'll be looking at desks and furniture and whether or not our nurse has a private area and whether our guidance counselors have private areas. Are we properly staffed? They'll be looking at all sorts of different indicators. And then hopefully by the following fall, we'll have a report that we can then share with all of you, which then becomes a public document. So I've provided for you at the end kind of a schedule, and then the very, very last page is kind of a sample page of here's what's going to be happening during that accreditation process, just specifically to the Sunday schedule. Fortunately, we have a new hotel in town that we can actually put the committee up. And so part of the cost that we had talked about with the $30,000 is that we're putting 16 people up for 3 nights. We're also feeding them. You're also providing some small stipends to the people, your teachers, who are chairing all these different committees. I want to thank you for the additional half day that you gave us, because we've been using our half-day professional development time to write reports. And if you get bored on December 6th, we're doing our report writing in the library. It's actually kind of a cool arrangement where the committees are all in different spots. And then anyone who is an information holder is in the middle of the library. And so as a committee member needs a piece of evidence, they go to the table in the middle of the room, they tag the person that they need, they go, they get the evidence, and we work to build a report. Okay. Any questions about accreditation? Wow.
A little overwhelming.
Yes, it is. It's one of those things, though, as we've gone through, it's been nice because it's kind of helped to validate a lot of the work that we've been doing over the last couple of years. So I'm going to go off a little bit from where, before I get to capstone, which is the last topic that you asked me to come and talk about tonight. And I just want to talk a little bit about the grading guide. There's a single sheet that's in front of you. And again, I'll go back to this, which is how do we actually go about measuring, and how do we ensure that students are having the opportunity to learn some of these things. So we have a requirement under the law this year for our freshman class of 2021, to not only have them graduate with the credits that you've outlined in the past in your graduation policy, but also to ensure for the core areas of math, science, social studies, and who am I missing? English, to make sure for those content areas that they have met standards. And we also need to make sure that we are reporting out on standards. Number one, for our own internal tracking, so that when a student receives credit in their Algebra 1 class or their geometry class, that we can say we've tracked the standards, that not only have you passed it, but you've actually passed all the standards. And if you think back to a traditional averaging grading system, you could, as a student, pass 2 quarters of a class, fail the other 2 quarters, so you mastered the content in 2 quarters, failed the other 2 quarters, and you average those together, you still get a passing grade. And you would have earned credit for that class even though you only mastered half the content. That's a possibility. It can happen. So really in our shift to proficiency and our shift to tracking of standards is that in order for you to pass a class, you need to demonstrate that you can actually do all the graduation standards that we have applied to that course. So it's a shift in thinking. It's a shift from, you know what, I gave an assessment, students didn't so well, we're moving on to, I gave an assessment, student didn't do so well. Guess what, we need to go back and revisit, we need to remediate, we need to do some other pieces because you can't earn credit until you've met all those standards. Some cases it happened naturally where classrooms are run that way, in some cases it didn't. But this kind of sets something across the board that this is the way that it is. Windham High School faculty have been outstanding as they've worked through this. And though it's only a requirement of the freshman class, about 75% of our teachers who teach some of the upper level classes are also working this way within their classes right now. Tracking standards, making sure that students have all sorts of opportunities, making sure that students have remediation opportunities as well. So I just want to share with you some of our grading commitments that we've made as a building. These are also the same grading commitments that as a district we've been working through. You will have a grading and reporting policy that will be coming forward over the next couple months where you'll get a chance to kind of look at grading practices. But here's just some things that we've agreed upon. So grades should reflect what students know and are able to do at different points in time. Academic grades should reflect an individual student's learning, and there's a typo there, of the skills and content standards associated with each subject, separate from habits of work. For those of you who've had high school students or have noticed, or have had someone go through the high school, you notice that habits of work is actually listed on the report card. And really it's social responsibility and academic responsibility. And we basically made a simple measuring device for that. You're either doing it or you're not. You're either academically prepared or you're not. You're either socially prepared and a participating member of the classroom environment, or you're not. And if you're not, here are the ways that you're not, and how are we going to help you to support you. If you aren't the greatest social aspect person in the class, but yet you still produce amazing work, removing habits of work does not penalize your grade. And so those of you who might have come in a system where 10% of your grade was participation, and you were the person in the corner who never wanted to talk because you were an introvert, that would have been me. Been an introvert, then you would have been penalized on your grade. By removing habits of work, you're not penalized for that. Also in here, guiding principles provide the framework for the application of content, knowledge, and skills reported separately from academic grades and habits of work. This is a piece right here. Look at that, guiding principles again. Let's tie it back in. Habits of work should reflect an individual student's mastery of work habits and ethics that are essential, and we as a staff have identified what we think to be essential. When NEAS comes, they're going to look for our school-wide rubrics and measurement tools. One of the things that we're going to share with them is our school-wide habits of work rubrics that we've developed. Students should be provided, and I love this one, with multiple opportunities to demonstrate learning in various ways over time. shouldn't be always the same way over and over again. Should be multiple ways, different ways for students to demonstrate. And grading practices provide students the opportunity to reflect and improve to promote growth and mastery of academic content and habits of work. That's where our remediation policies come from, for students to be able to reassess. And then grading should promote feedback to students, parents, and instructors, because really the whole purpose of grading is not to sort and separate, it's to let parents and students and teachers know that the kids get it or they don't. And so our practices are tied to trying to figure out how we're going to measure these. And again, it goes back to success for all. So some students may get it first time through, other students may not. The other major change that you might see in our grading is that we have assessments that are called summative assessments. Think about them like a summary. They're the final. They're making a decision whether or not students have met those concepts. There's also assessments called formative to inform instruction. They're practice opportunities. Another change we made in our grading is that grades now are reflecting those summative pieces. So if I don't do so well on the practice pieces, but I get the feedback, I understand what's going on, and I get to those summative pieces, those summative pieces say you can do it or you can't. And if you can't do it, let's recycle back through, do some additional instruction, give you a chance to do another assessment. So a little bit of a change, and so you may see, for parents in the high school, you may see a couple less grades that are in there. And what was that? Just kind of something that we really wanted to focus in on, what were those summary pieces that really were showing. So kids are getting hopefully more opportunities for feedback, more opportunities to be able to demonstrate. The other piece that it does for those formative pieces don't count against kids. And I've heard from board members in the past, what about the kid who can come into a class, can participate, do the other stuff, doesn't necessarily do all the homework, but can ace the tests, or can ace the assessment, or can write a great paper? And a system where you look at just the summative doesn't penalize a kid. Because really that grade is not about, did I do all the things along the way? It's about, can you do it or you can't do it? And so that's another piece. So NEASC, again, is going to look at some of our grading practices. And is there evidence to show that these grading practices are through? So our first report card, based on standards being reported, because we're giving standards as well as a traditional term grade, was finalized yesterday. So hopefully a message went out on the listserv this afternoon with complete instructions for parents. How do I actually get in through Infinite Campus to find those final comments and reports? If not, it will be sent out in the morning, because we want to make sure that everyone can navigate that grading program that we have. All right, let's cap the night off with some capstone.
Could
Yes,
you
I'm
take
sorry.
questions? Can you take questions on
Sure.
that? So you're not using jump rope?
We are not using jump rope, we're using Infinite Campus.
Okay.
And Infinite Campus is working on a new gradebook for teachers that will give some of the functionality, if not most of the functionality, that is within jump rope currently. One of our choices for staying with Infinite Campus was our high school teachers spend much more time in Infinite Campus than maybe some of our elementary teachers do, because they're constantly doing attendance and some other pieces. And for them to be jumping back and forth between grading programs would be difficult. And so we made the conscious commitment that we would go ahead and make it a way for Infinite Campus to do this. The other reason why is that we have to produce a transcript, which jump rope couldn't do at the time, because we're going to be sending out information to schools and colleges about how kids are going to be doing, or programs. And it didn't have the ability to do that. So to then try to track and send would be very, very difficult.
Yeah, I'm not pro or con.
Yep.
It's just that we're using it 6 through 8, and then they're going over, and those parents that are finally getting used to it won't have that. But how do you indicate meeting a standard? What is the indication that the kid has met the standard? How do you indicate that?
Sure. For every single graduation standard that we have determined for a course, we have a scoring rubric or a guide that basically says it's a 1, 2, 3, 4. And those scoring guides are built into assessments, so you actually may see I don't want to say a traditional test, but a test that might still be on a 100 scale, but still has some elements of the 1 to 4 within it. Right now, Proficiency was written in those scales as a 3 for this year, and we're going to have a conversation about this. We get to graduation policy. We're accepting a 2 as minimal proficiency for credit. Part of the reasoning behind that is that this piece of legislation for proficiency-based law, which was signed into law by the state of Maine, you cannot with a pen magically erase an achievement gap that has come up with students through K-8. And so to expect that every single freshman now is going to be on grade level, performing at a proficiency level, so we really looked at what's kind of something in between for a starting point. So all of our students in a freshman level class need to have a 2 or greater in all their standards, and they need to be an overall term grade that's passing.
It's what they're doing at the middle school, and there really seems to need to be a little bit of flexibility, because not everybody's equal anyways. I was just curious how they did that.
Yep.
I'll be quiet.
Yes, Genevieve?
So just kind of like from the students' kind of perspective, I feel like with this grading system, we get kind of, I mean, I guess I don't know about the underclassmen because I bet they're completely educated in this, but as an upperclassman, like seeing all these like little changes, I get like little bits of information. I know the parents are getting a little bit of information. Is there like some sort of like educating that we can do for the students and the parents to kind of get them on board? I mean, I'm going to be gone in a few months, so it's not really like me, but a lot of the other students are frustrated with the grading system because, I mean, it's change, and change is never going to be, you know. And so I think that, and parents are, it's almost like politics at dinner when the grading system comes up, and, you know, and so things like that. I think that some sort of, like, education piece in there would be helpful for students and parents. Also, with the, like, how grades, is that what we still call them? I think there's been some confusion because we have the, like, basic rubric about, like, what is each of the things that you get, like, meets, exceeds, partially meets, whatever, on, but it's very specific to the teachers, and so once these come out, you know, first quarter, everyone's like, whoa, wait, what? Like, but I did this, and teachers like, oh, but you didn't do this, and we're like, were we supposed to? You know, it's like just little things like that, where there's like a lot of confusion coming out of like, why did I get a meets and not an exceeds? And it's like, oh, well, you didn't come after school, and it's like, well, because I was doing my work in class, and it's like, oh, well, you need to like go above by coming after school, like little things like that I feel like even like a little piece in like the syllabus would be nice, like this is what a partially meeting how grade is, this is what a meets how grading is, so I think that might be helpful as well.
Yeah, and I would absolutely agree with you that there's a whole transition period that has to happen. You know, we've included some information in the newsletter. We've also, this is part of a larger grading guide, which will actually be on the website hopefully within the next couple weeks. But there's also going to be a transition, and that's part of why we chose as a staff and as a district to maintain that term grade, because in the past you would have just received a term grade, which is here how you did for the quarter. And now you're getting the additional information of here for those standards for that course, here's how you're doing in those as well. So in the past, you would have just kind of covered over those standards, and you would have just had that term grade at the bottom. So that's actually the grade interpretation that's going out through listserv. It's some great feedback, though. And I think part of it is, you know, also as a high school, we're going through some changes, and we're learning how to explain some pieces and making sure that, you know, what are the pitfalls and things that we thought that everyone would just get, and then all of a sudden they didn't. Other pieces is that we didn't expect the rest of the faculty to want to go on so quickly. We thought we'd be working in a freshman world this year where kids are transit, and you know what, staff said, let's just do it. Let's just go ahead and do it, but it's some great feedback. Great feedback.
Can we get a peek at what that campus grading looks like? Is there a dummy student that we got a presentation on jump rope, but that was rolled out.
Yeah.
So we got to see that, and of course we never really got as far as it could go anyways, but love to see what that looks like.
Yeah.
Not right now.
Okay.
And you got a hand.
But I say I've got my computer. I've got my computer, and I know
And if
there's
that's what it takes, maybe we can get together at some point. I'm just curious to see the information that's available through that.
Maybe Genevieve will share.
It is a helpful system.
Yeah, I know.
I feel like it's pretty user friendly.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, what's gone out or going out, and we had some problems with a PDF converting over, is a descriptor of what am I looking at on this report card in the sample. There was just some frustration on getting it to convert onto the listserv this afternoon.
There's always bumps, everything that you do.
Yes, but it's good stuff.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Thank you.
All right, last thing, let's talk about capstone. And we require students to do 22 credits for graduation. And those 22 credits are a little bit more specific to content. Some students will graduate from Wyndham High School with 22 credits. Some will graduate with 26. Some as many as 28. Okay, but those tend to be some areas that are specific to courses. Really what capstone gets to are back here to the guiding principle pieces, and specifically to some pieces of creative practical problem solver, clear and effective communicator, and responsible and involved citizen. Previous to a capstone project, and I know this is review for the board, but for anyone who may be watching tonight, previously we had a community service requirement where students needed to complete, the goal was 10 hours of community service per year, with really the direction that students didn't get paid for that community service. There really weren't a lot of parameters that were placed upon it. It was an honor system that kids would actually get their hours signed off by somebody and then they would get entered. And so a board, some members of the sitting board looked at what are some other opportunities, are there ways that we can look at either service learning or ways to take a look at that requirement to make it more relevant to students. So we started looking at some other capstones that are happening in other buildings and other high schools across the state. Capstones are actually becoming more and more common for schools as additional opportunities and final opportunities for students to be able to demonstrate that they've met some guiding principle pieces. Capstone for me actually takes on another part, and experiencing this now as having a student finish high school and then head off to his college, still not knowing. I want kids leaving Wyndham High School actually having a good handle on what they truly are interested in for a vocation or an opportunity or an area of interest or a subject area. I want kids to have some opportunity to have some time in that. And I also want students to be able to spend some time in that, because I would hate to see a kid who thinks that they're going to leave Wyndham High School, they're going to go into nursing, or they're going to go into construction, or they're going to go into business, never having the opportunity to spend any time in any of those vocations, going to school either for a year or a semester, and then realizing, you know what, I really don't like this. This isn't something that I want to do. And mom and dad, our kid now has spent a tremendous amount of money and really have not had that opportunity to say, you know what, this is something. So part of also for me, and this is I think one of the most important parts coming out of capstone, is I want students during that time when they're making decisions that are going to have huge impacts going forward, that you as a board and that we as a high school provide them some opportunities in order to be able to go out and find a mentor, to work in the community, and to really experience something, whether or not that they actually like it or not. The other piece that's kind of central to this, I believe every single student has an interest in a gift, okay, and some of them may not actually traditionally mesh well with schools, but every student's got an interest and every student's got a gift, and if that's something that they can turn into a vocation, then I want this to be an opportunity for them to be able to explore that vocation and to be able to have some time doing that. So if you turn to the second page of the capstone, kind of some of the steps, your only class right now, or your first class for a capstone, I should say, is going to be this current junior class. Okay? Genevieve's the last class that has the 40-hour community service requirement. So under the steps of the capstone, we want kids to pick an area of interest. We want them to spend some time documenting some of their prior knowledge. We want them to find a mentor. Okay, we want them to find, and that mentor can be somebody in Wyndham and Raymond. It can be someone that they know who they can contact across the country. I don't care who it is, but I want them to find someone who's experienced in their area of interest. So if a student is interested in, working on cars, being a mechanic, that there's a mechanic somewhere in the communities that they can then find, work with, and have that opportunity. I also want them to have somebody at Wyndham High School that they connect with. And so one of the things that we'll be working with kids this spring for our juniors, and actually will be through our advisory program, would be to start identifying and thinking about what is it that you might want to pursue for a project or an interest, and then also to start identifying who's going to be your faculty person that you're going to work with, and then who possibly could you use as a mentor. So we're going to hope to accomplish those three things. So if kids want to get working on this this summer, or if they, something that they just want to even make some contacts, that's an opportunity for them. Yes?
And it says here on number 6 that they will do a minimum of 20 hours of research, like job shadowing and interviews and things like that. Is that something that would be done over the summer or during the school year?
So it would be all of the above. The other thing that goes along with this is that students would no longer be completing senior finals. At that point, really for most of our kids, transcripts are being, don't listen to this, Genevieve. Schools are looking a lot at that first semester transcript. They're doing a check-in when they get to the second semester transcript, but really eliminating the senior finals. We also find that there's this time period with AP exams starting about the 1st of May where once students have finished those exams, they have quite a bit of time that's built in their schedule. There would be some opportunity as well. There are some schools around us that during the month of May, students go and work. I wouldn't be proposing or go find their interest area, but looking at some opportunities. But that senior final time would also free up some time, as well as some time in the month of May. We would hopefully not have students getting to that point, but looking at either summer or after school or some other times.
Okay.
And you know what, if it's a student who's already pursuing a passion, then maybe working with a coach or somebody else, or if they already have a job and they're working within that job, that they're finding somebody who can possibly be a mentor to be able to support them. And really what we're looking at is over the course of the year to have the students do 3 reflections. What is it that I'm learning? What is it that I'm having an opportunity to kind of experience? And then finally, what are they going to do? How are they going to use the information that they've learned? One piece that we've had a group that's been working on, looking at capstone. We had initially proposed that students would be doing individual panel presentations. We're just trying to figure out, can we actually do that? Or I know some schools have gone to a larger, almost like a presentation fair, where there's some larger groups and the community's invited in, as well as underclassmen to hear the capstone project that students have been working on. And again, we would have some time during that finals week in order to be able for students to do that. So hopefully students would be done, ready to prepare by that point in time. But really, it gets back to this idea that I want to work with kids to make sure that they have that opportunity to explore something. Also, as a member of the high school faculty, I want to have kids that I'm mentoring through this process. I want to be part of this. I want our administrators, our guidance counselors, all of our teachers to be working with students as they work through this process. Because again, it's super important, the investment of time. For my own student at home, fortunately here within his freshman year, he's now found an area of direction of study that he wants to head off in. I'd rather have kids figure that out prior to spending some money. And there's also been some questions about, should this be for all students? Well, this says for all. And so some students may need some supports. I should be coming before you in the next couple of weeks for any new course proposals. And one thing that we're looking at proposing is a senior capstone seminar for students who want to do this through a course instead of doing it on their own. And so it would be a quarter credit, would take place during a quarter, and it would have the opportunity for students to be able to do it as under the support of an instructor. And I do have a couple individuals who would like to actually take this on as a class and work with students through kind of a senior seminar.
I think this is a great program. I'm fully in support of it, and I'm certainly in support of involving all of the staff members in the mentoring, not only the teachers, but you and the guidance counselors
those people.
And I think another piece to add to that, it doesn't have to be a Wyndham High School person who could be a faculty mentor. It could be someone from their elementary experience. It could also be, or I should say from their advisor, it could be someone from elementary or the middle schools or one of those other places.
That's great.
Maybe Mr. Prince would take on a student.
Question.
Yep.
So what is currently being communicated to the students? Because I have
So-
kids already asking me, saying things like, well, I've heard we have to get up in front of the whole school and do a presentation. And I'm like, no.
So we've
So there's a
gone
lot of
before
mixed.
we went before students as sophomores, we went before them as freshmen and sophomores. We'll be spending some time in the spring, once we get past the holidays, going before them again. A lot of the students have come to me and said, what should I be working on? Should I be doing this? And I said, no. At this point, we're going to be spending a little bit more time going forward. We've only sent a couple items out to the newsletter. I think there was, the last time probably was February, that some things went out. But, as we start to ramp up into next year, we'll be working with kids throughout the spring, starting, first of all, probably February, March, and having them start working through some ideas on what it is that they want to do. And I've already had a few kids contact me and said, would this be a good thing I could do for Capstone? And absolutely. I love the one that was a kid said, I have a mentor that I think I can use in California. Is that okay? Sure. If you can FaceTime, Skype,
Yeah.
work together that way, what a great experience. And also, we started the very, very beginning with, eventually there's going to be an A pile and a B pile. And being able to talk about your Capstone experience and some of those things that you do, one of those things that might move you over in those piles and make you a little bit more competitive. So I know I've talked a lot tonight. And we've covered a number of different things, but again, let's go back to why. This is all about making sure that this thing comes alive. Our current vision is a little bit different. Some of this language was removed, but these are some pieces that we as a high school staff are trying to make real and are trying to make some connections for kids, and also to make sure that students like Genevieve can leave Wyndham High School and go on and do some great things. Okay. Any questions? I know we've covered a lot.
I just have two questions. First of all, with the newness of this program, I just want to make sure that students feel supported. So who is the gatekeeper for, I know that they have to develop an essential question with the help of a mentor and advisor. Who ultimately is the gatekeeper that, yes, you've got a mentor, and yes, you've got, is it the advisor?
It's going to be the advisor. And the way that our, really two sets of advisors. That one right now, every student's in an advisory.
Right.
And advisories run anywhere from 11 to 15 to 16 students. So that individual will be making sure that students are making some progress along the way.
Okay.
I think for some of those individual questions that come up and that take place, then hopefully that individual who serves as the individual faculty advisor can help with any questions or things. I just personally, I look forward to the opportunity to be able to sit down with some kids and explore, what are some interest areas and how can we turn those into a question, and, are there people in the community that I know that I can help match you up with? And, some of our advisors have been already kind of thinking through some things that they can do to support their students. But I agree, it's an actually important thing to make sure that kids are feeling supported. The other thing is, I also want to make sure that students are feeling excited about this, that it's not one more thing. I want them to feel, this is something that, is an area of interest of mine. And, I look at a great example, Genevieve, who's with you here, has helped build Power Serve as a day of community service for Wyndham and Raymond and Gorham that's taken place on the high school campus for the last couple of years, and has been able to engage a number of students through that process. And what a great opportunity for kids to get together and to learn what it's like to run an event like that with an area of interest. I mean, that in itself could be their capstone. And, they could be working on an event like that. But it doesn't have to be. It can be a kid who, I'm interested in being an electrician, and finding an electrician who's willing to take them under their wings and to be able to learn a little bit more about the business and spend some time. And you know what, at the end, I hope that kid says, yes, I want to be an electrician, or there's no way. And what better way to do that when it doesn't cost any money?
May I ask one final
Sure.
question? The new information or the new learning, and it probably isn't new, it's just that I was asleep at the wheel, but number 9, a minimum of 10 hours of community service is suggested, and that seems new to me.
So with that, working with students that, when they're working with their mentor, they're working in, it's a secondary piece, which is how can you use that to support the community, or how can you use that to support other things, such as, you know, if I'm someone who wants to pursue something with music as a musician, are there opportunities for me to give back to the community? This is a suggested piece, but it's something that I want to have students thinking about. You know, what are some opportunities to give back? You know, I've got kids that are musicians. What are the opportunities to kind of give back using your gift? If you had a kid who, let's say, was interested in public service, you know, are there opportunities for you to, even part of your research or job time, is there some hours of that you can do to help support that? And it gets into this responsible, involved citizen.
Thank you.
And if you want to read the full handbook, it is on the high school website under Students, Handbooks. It's right next to cell phone policy, student handbook, and all those other pieces.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
A lot of information, but we
Just wanted to
appreciate
get
it.
all of one session.
Yeah.
Okay, moving right along. We have the report of the secretary. If I could have a motion.
I move to approve the minutes of the October 4th, 2017 meeting.
Second?
Pete, did you review all these for us?
No, I did not.
Oh, Pete.
I did.
You did?
Yeah.
Oh, Janny, okay, so no, everything's good?
I don't know if that's true, but I.
I looked at it, but I
All right.
didn't examine them.
All those in favor? It's unanimous.
I move to approve the minutes of the October 18th, 2017 meeting.
Second.
All those in favor? It's unanimous. Okay, the next item on the agenda is our committee reports. We just had a facilities meeting. I don't know if you want to give any highlights of that or report out on another time. Ms. Briggs?
We talked about, and I'll send out the minutes, but
Yeah.
we talked about the visit from the DOE and some possible additions to our application that would be due by December. We talked about the maintenance facility, and I think the Finance Committee will probably be discussing that as well, as far as the interlocal agreement that has just been kind of launched, and that agreement is spearheaded by the town of Wyndham, and they do their thing with their attorney, and we'll be then having an opportunity to review it and see if we concur with what the terms are for that building. We talked about how to proceed. Well, first of all, we talked about the application process. Specifically, there are 80 applications. They have visited 50 of those applications. And as Bill reported out, they really knew their stuff when they came to our school. It was very clear that they had really drilled down, and they asked some very specific questions. Sandy, you were there, so I don't know if you want to add to that at all.
Definitely did their homework, very well versed as to what that facility, the strengths and weaknesses were. So it was a good session.
So again, the results won't be until April. So because of the timing, we took a step back and we talked about where we had been as far as a recommendation for our move forward. And as you recall, and I won't I won't get into too much of the minutia, but it was 2016 of June that we had a recommendation at that point from the Facilities Committee, and it was presented to the board in this big hoopla PowerPoint gig. And we were recommending a new building. And there were other pieces to that, which I won't get into. Because we're concerned, not concerned, but because we feel like we need to do due diligence, we are getting new demographic information, and we're also getting updated from the town housing starts. Because, I don't know, you drive around and it seems like there's holes in the ground and things are springing up, so and it's not even so much just the singletons. What we really want to find out is if there's huge developments, because we reference Spring Street in Westbrook, and that thing is humongous, and what that impact was on the Westbrook schools, which was substantial. So we don't want to be blindsided. We really want to be as informed as we possibly can be. And part of the demographic information that we'll be getting from, I can't remember the name, Rebecca Hoo-Hoo, whatever her last name is. We hope to get it, whatever, let's make something up cute. We hope to have that in time to submit also for the additional information for the application, which may help support our cause. As far as enrollment, we talked about the need for portables next year at the middle school, and what that looks like, where that will be, the cost involved. It's going to be a chunk of change to do that. The first year is going to be about $100,000, which is new monies that we've never had to spend before. After that, it will be reduced because you won't have all the hookups and all of that. It'll be like, I'm estimating, according to Bill, like $25,000 down the road each year. So that's something that, you know, we're going to need. It'll be the 6th grade, one class. And then finally, we talked about the go forward. I think we just all want to be as well prepared as far as what direction we're going to go in come April, so that, all right, we find out we do or we don't get money. So we're not like hemming and hawing, well, do we want to go 5 to 8 or not, blah, blah. So instead of hemming and hawing, we thought we'd be more proactive, and once we get the demographic information, that will inform us as whether maybe we need to consider, which was not part of the recommendation and not part of the considerations before, to have a 5 to 8 building. Saying that, we did, the PDT plans do accommodate raising up for another level. So we could, I mean, we were thinking about it. It wasn't like we weren't thinking about it, but if we get numbers that support, this might be really something we have to do.
Probably will be more apt to do that than
Right, then let's do it. You know, Bill brought up an interesting concept of, that we'll look into to see, about a 4 to 8. There's a lot of, you want to say something? No? Oh, you're, oh.
What?
Your mouth was like, huh?
No.
Okay. I thought I didn't remember right. But it's very fresh. We just talked about it tonight. Again, we want to make sure that whatever we sell, we want to be able to answer the questions. Did you think about this, or what about that? I mean, we talked about the half-full buildings up here, because that could be. The interesting thing, and I'm going on, but the interesting thing about this whole application process, which was reiterated again tonight, and we're going to get more information, but as I understand it now, tell me if I'm not playing with a full deck here, but as I understand it, the DOE could look at our application and look at our whole school and say, well, you know what, you're asking for a new building, but we notice that you've got 2 buildings that are half full, and they might come back with, well, we'll do this for you based on that. Do you know what I'm saying? So I just feel like there's a lot of pieces here, and we want to kind of flesh out as much as we can before we get to April, so that, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but it seems like we've been talking about this since the cows came home. And I just, we want to be informed, and we want to be able to answer crucial questions such as, why don't we change the line? And Don actually, I asked him to go and look, what would that look like? Have the numbers changed? Because back when we did it before, and we reviewed it before, it was approximately, I believe, 103 students. So when you flush that out over 5 to K, 103, and you break that down, it's not a tremendous impact to do that. And according to Don, there might be just a little bit of an increase. He's going to get the numbers to us. We didn't have them tonight. So, I mean, it's data. That's simple, pure and simple. That's all it is. It's just data, so that we can answer the questions. So I know I've droned on, and I'll put it all in a thing. But this is for us, you know, some pretty high stakes stuff, and we just want to be smart about it.
It's going to be a reality. I mean, I'm in a butter to another 23 house development on Chew Road. So I plan to go to the planning board as a citizen, but I plan to ask them in part of their planning. I mean, I understand DEP and all these things that they go through, but are they really planning on what the impact is to the infrastructure of the RSU? Because we're already at capacity at the primary school, and you know, that many houses. I mean, just the 3 in my little block, just the 3 is 60-something houses.
Wow. See, I don't know the rules about the approval process for that, so I don't know how.
Well, there's things you can do. There's impact fees. There's all kinds of things you can do. But
anyway, I'm sorry to kind of drone on and on, but that's.
No, thank you for the update.
It was a lot.
Yeah. And we have a new subcommittee that hopefully will be meeting soon.
Oh, we haven't told Peter.
No, I
For the,
Oh, you did.
okay.
Yeah,
So-
we're meeting right before the next board meeting.
Okay,
so
perfect.
2 weeks from now.
Okay, good. And Scott, would you like to give the announcement? I'm sure most people have heard, but your committee for the
Yeah.
shared.
Yep, I sent out an email, but the joint vehicle maintenance facility did pass by 176 votes. And as Kate had just mentioned, Tony has started the language for a lease agreement. When Dawn is presented that, we will all get the opportunity to take a look at it and review it, and then pass it back with our recommendations.
Okay.
I like a
And
lot of school days.
Dawn, that's adult ed.
No, we're going to meet in December,
Okay,
so I'll give an update after that.
okay. Any Katahdin news? No?
No.
Okay. And what's up with technology?
Nothing at this
There's-
point.
There's still no group formed yet?
Nope.
Nothing? Okay. Genevieve, what's going on with the student council?
Let's see. Well, we got a lot of stuff going on. We're starting to meet. We have like a regular time that we're meeting, so we're trying to expand right now to kind of get more students involved, because things like that. But as far as the school goes, I don't know if you guys saw the like theater production, The
Not
Sound of
yet.
Music, but it was amazing. So that was really cool to see. Yeah, that's all I got.
Okay.
I heard Mr. Howell is in that.
You did a great job.
So that's a Wizard of Oz, right? The other thing I'd just like to mention is the wonderful job with the football team. They're
Yeah.
going to the state meet this Saturday at 11:06 at the Fitzpatrick Stadium. And, you know, it's a fairly new football team. I mean, 17, 18 years, and this is their 3rd championship. So kudos to them, whether they win or not. We just really congratulate them for doing a great job. Thank you.
Well, they did a good job of that
Paul.
terrible weather, and they're going to have terrible weather again, so it might be in their favor.
Just to update. We forgot policy. Okay, I'll do the policy update. So we've been working on the facilities use policy for, I think, a year.
The 13th iteration of
The
the school.
13th draft. So that is the workshop that we will be having on the 29th to present to you lovely folks on what the changes are and why we went about that policy work. So that is that next meeting that we have added to the schedule. Okay? Is there anything else policy-wise? We have some work to do now, revisiting the promotional materials as well.
We'll definitely do
So-
that. We'll try to do that as soon as possible. Graduation is on hold until we find out about the special ed piece, but the last I heard, we were gonna move forward. So we're gonna go rogue. Okay?
Okay.
Good. Excellent.
Okay, as far as roundtable news or anything else, I'll start with you.
I have
No?
nothing.
Nothing? No news? No news? I haven't been to the play yet, but I'll go this weekend.
I want to say go Eagles. That's what
Yay.
I had planned to say that. So. I wrote it down.
Well, they are Eagles. My daughter's team, U13 7th graders, they were undefeated in their ladies soccer.
Oh, good.
Wow.
But they also play travel soccer. So they won the Falmouth Cup and went on to win the state championship. And were invited to the New England championship, but they didn't have U13, so they played up one level, U14, and won it. And this is 2 years in a row.
Wow.
So future ladies soccer.
Pretty good team.
Yes. Very good.
So very proud.
Wow.
Long
Yeah.
way to go. We went to Vermont.
Cool.
It was like 12 degrees. It was snowing. And we're like, let's play soccer. But we won.
That's what champions are made, right there in the tough stuff.
That's right.
I actually just wanted to take a minute and recognize Mr. Noonan and Mr. Riddle at the high school. I got to go to the cross-country awards last night. It was a long awards. It was, I think, just over 2 hours, but they took the time to not just recognize like each one of the students on the team. They really knew each one of the students on the team, and it was obvious the interest and the investment they put on those kids, and to see it come out in the kids, it was awesome. So they got me all choked up.
Oh. Nothing,
That's
Mr.
it.
Colby? Anything else we missed? No? Then if I could have a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor? Good night.